I'm Nolan Greubel.
I'm Heather Greubel.
We've been going to Riverview for 4 years, and we have 4 boys: Rhett, Mav, Barrett, and Witten.
So back in December, Witten fell off a bar stool. It was Christmas Day, and he hit his head pretty hard. And he started vomiting later and spiked a weird fever, so we thought it may have been a possible concussion. So we took him into the ER, and they did a scan, and they thought they found some spots on his brain. Ended up having like some virus that caused the vomiting and the fever. And we were sent to Children's Mercy, where we go in Kansas City, and we were discharged with just bad imaging on his brain, so there's nothing there, and he healed. So a month later, he ended up getting the flu, and he was super sick for a few days, just puking, and then he felt better, was eating all day, and then the next day is kind of when he tanked. So Saturday, he wasn't feeling very well. He had declined quite a bit, so we had kind of talked that if he wasn't better by Sunday morning, we were going to take him into the doctor to be seen. Well, he woke up Sunday morning unresponsive, so we went ahead and we took him into the hospital around 9 a.m. They got him as stable as they could, and they had spoke with the specialists in Kansas City, and they decided that they needed to life flight him. So we get to Kansas City, he gets put in his room. They have us hooked up. He was still on the nasal cannula. He was really doing okay, and then I noticed like he was doing some labor breathing, and particularly I could see it in his face and in his neck. And the respiratory therapist was in the room with us, and I asked her, I was like, I see that he's labor breathing. He hasn't been doing that. Can you just check him out? But then he just started to rapidly decline, and literally everybody rushed in the room. So he was on the nasal cannula. They put him on high flow. They gave him albuterol to help open his lungs up, and none of that was working. Like, he was still tanking. And the doctor pulled me aside, and he was like, you know, we've tried every option that we can right now, and he's just not responding. The only other option that we have is intubation, and there's not even a guarantee that at this point that'll even work because how rapidly he's declining. And then he told me to step out of the room.
So Heather calls me at 11 o'clock, and when I answer, she is, I don't think I've ever heard her like that before. And she tells me that I need to rush to the hospital as fast as I can because she doesn't know if Witten's gonna make it.
My faith in the moment as I'm staring at that screen is I never once questioned God why he was doing this to me or us as a family. It was more of, what are you trying to teach me? What are you trying to show me through this? I definitely struggled, but it was never like I was completely hopeless or felt betrayed or anything like that. It was more of, what can I take from this? Not, why are you doing this?
Okay, my faith in the moment, and when Heather called me and told me about Witten, was the first thing that went through my mind was what can I do to get closer to God to get me through what was getting ready to happen. One of the hardest things was telling Heather's parents, Pam and Tim, as I left that night, that Witten may not be making it. So when I told Pam and Tim the first thing, Pam took me in and we prayed for Witten, and a safe drive to Kansas City. So as I left Pam and Tim's, I didn't grab anything. And I drove to Kansas City as fast as I could. I called multiple people. I called my mom, my brother, and I called Ryan. So as I called them, they prayed with me and giving me advice and telling me that it was going to be okay, because it was all in God's hands, not mine.
So Sunday night, he was placed on the ventilator. He was on nitric oxide. He was getting albuterol to open up his lungs, and he responded well. It took him about an hour for them to actually get him stable once he was placed on the ventilator, and he just overall responded really well. He was on it for three days, and then they tried to extubate him, and he was still just a little bit too sedated, so it was failed. They again started bagging him and trying to get him stable and couldn't, so they went ahead and re-intubated him. They did an MRI, and it came back that he had encephalitis, which is swelling of the brain, and that was what caused his breathing to stop, his lungs to stop working, basically all your motor skills. Just as we thought we were coming out of all of that, it was night shift, and all of a sudden his sats started dropping again, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. His sats dropped, his heart rate was insanely high, his blood pressure was crazy, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. This was all during the transition of night shift and day shift. So thankfully our doctor was working that morning, and he came in and he was like, has anybody taken a temperature on him? And they were like, no. So took a temperature, ended up, he did spike a fever. So it was a new fever. So now they're going back to high dose of antibiotics to try to fix that issue. But in the midst of all of it, he was still going haywire. So they had to give him a paralytic. They had to sedate him 100%. And he was back on ventilation after breathing on his own for 17 hours. We were looking at extubation, and we ended up having to wait several more days for that. Okay, so after 14 days of being on the ventilator and one failed extubation, we finally had success at removing that.
So after the ventilator was removed, we spent 2 more weeks in the hospital weaning him off all the medicines and doing rehab to gain all of his motor skills back. So I saw God move in many different ways through this situation. The main one was he watched him literally heal my son. In other ways, he answered several other prayers as we were working through everything. And God provided the best doctors and nurses for Witten. We were very humbled by how our church family supported us through all this with donations and prayers and the stack of cards that everybody wrote Witten that he enjoyed us reading to him, and just all the support from all of our pastors and our life groups and just everybody at the church. We just feel very humbled and loved.
Our church supported us in so many different ways, like he said, with prayers, with cards, with gifts, with gift cards, like everything you could think of. Breast milk donations, I don't know, just reaching out and just words of encouragement, and yeah, so many different ways.
We learned that having fellow Christians walk beside you in both trials and joy is very crucial.
We learned that God hears the powerful prayers of his people.
I learned that God sees my heart and I am not in control.
God has shown us that not only does he hear your prayers and he listens to you, but he will not forsake you. And he's always with you to help you get through your trials.
We are the Greubel family, and we are so thankful that God spared Witten's life so we can sit here with him today.